Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Creatio's webinar. Today, we will be discussing Creatio's ideas about automating customer-facing and operational processes in professional services organizations with low code. We will be sharing real-life use cases and discussing Creatio's customers' experience automating these processes to support their business goals. And today, I'm joined by one of my colleagues as we walk through this discussion today. My name is Creatio, and I look forward to being joined by one of my colleagues while we host a live demo and a series of question and answer sections. We hope to make this a very interactive discussion, so we welcome you to post all of your questions in the Q&A section throughout the webinar. And following the discussion, we'll provide all registered participants with a recording of the webinar and answer any of those unanswered questions offline today. So as mentioned, my name is Creatio. I'm a marketing and communications manager at Creatio, and I look forward to being your host today and walking you through that Q&A discussion later on this afternoon. And I'm joined by my colleague, Nandish Madhupati, and Nandish is our experienced enterprise solutions manager, and he will lead the discussion in a live demonstration today. So Nandish, I'll allow you to just say hello and give yourself a brief introduction.
Thanks, Corey, and good morning to you, and good morning, everyone. Name is Nandish Madhupati. I'm the Enterprise Solution Manager here at Creatio. About 20 years of work experience in the CRM industry, and Creatio specifically for the last 18 months. Very excited about the low-code technology and this webinar in particular. Thank you very much. Back to you, Corey.
Excellent. Thank you, Nandish. Very happy to have you on today. And just to look at our agenda for what we'll be discussing today, we'll first be talking about our company and giving you a brief overview of Creatio. Then we'll talk about industry trends in customer experience and operations management in the post-COVID-19 era. Then we'll talk about how low-code can help, Creatio's low-code platform for CRM and business process management, and then we'll provide that hands-on demo of automating customer-facing and operational processes with the help of low-code. Then followed by that question and answer section that I mentioned previously. And again, we encourage you to post any and all of your questions in the chat section today. We hope to make this a very interactive discussion and look forward to answering your questions. So just by way of background, while this will be a refresher for many of you, for those who are less familiar with Creatio, we have 5 offices around the world, and we house over 650 employees in those 5 offices. We have a robust channel network of over 700 partners, consistent of consultants and system integrators. And this large channel network and robust group of employees in the 5 global offices help us to deliver our solution in 110 countries worldwide. We're also highly recognized by key industry analysts, such as analysts from Gartner and Forrester, and look forward to discussing that recognition moving forward. Here's a look at our recognition that we've accomplished over the years with Gartner. We are included in 5 Gartner Magic Quadrants, and we are a leader in 2 of these Magic Quadrants for Salesforce automation and CRM lead management. We're very pleased to have received leadership recognition in 2020 and look forward to seeing our placement in the additional Magic Quadrant reports that will be published this year. We're also recognized in 7 Forrester waves, of which we are a strong performer in. 5 of these waves speaking to our CRM and Salesforce automation capabilities, and 2 of these waves speaking to our low-code and process automation capabilities. So I'm going to hand over to Nandish very quickly while he can give you a brief overview of our next section.
Thank you very much, Corey. So, hey, good morning, everyone. Once again, I'm going to take you through the rest of the finish line. So we're going to first take a look at understanding what are some of the industry trends, in particular for customer experience and operations management, as it pertains to the professional services organization. Maybe unpack that a little bit in greater detail, see how that connects to the customer experience. How does Creatio fit into all of this, and specifically Creatio's low-code platform? And once we're done with that, I'm going to pivot towards a demo. And from a demo perspective, we're going to focus on 3 things. One is the recruiting aspect of it, because that is one of the key components of professional services organization. Then we're going to take a look into machine learning and how we can predict some data. And then we're also going to take it from a forecasting perspective and show you what are some of the cool features in forecasting that Creatio has come up with. So with that in there, so let me just give you the top 5 trends that is happening. I think most of you are already familiar with this. So this probably should not come as a shock to you guys. So obviously, with the post-COVID pandemic, and there's a complete disruption, not just in the United States, but across the globe. Clearly, communications between the employees and also the customers is becoming important. And technology, if CIOs are not talking about digital transformation, it is in the forefront of their minds. And specifically, I'm speaking to a couple of CIOs that are accelerating digital transformations, particularly from a low-code perspective. And a lot of that has to do with making their organizations more nimble. Now, as it pertains to that, in addition to the communications, the natural progression obviously means that a lot of these automated tools are now getting more and more prominent because these low scale, automation is making things much more efficient. As a result of all of that, employees that used to do those manual tasks now have to reskill themselves, right? So all of these are interconnected. And as and when employees are now working more and more from home, that includes Creatio employees ourselves, now the organizations have to be more nimble, have to be more agile, but at the same time, they also have to make sure that they don't compromise on the overall customer experience for their clients, whether that comes from a B2C side or whether that comes from the B2B side. So now let's start unpacking those trends a little bit, one at a time, right? So from a communications perspective, we are all getting familiar with Zoom meetings. We're all getting familiar with Slack and Microsoft Teams, right? So basically, we are now breaking silos and making sure that the communications with the employees is as seamless as possible, right? And we've been speaking that mantra from, especially from a Creatio side, with the unified customer 360 database. We are talking about how you can look at it from a customer, whether you're coming it from a sales, service, or marketing perspective, you have the same visibility to that customer. So that way you can serve your customers through an omni-channel way, but you can also extend that to the employees side. So when we mean communications and customer experience, we're actually talking about the people experience. And as such, people simply means the sum of customers and also sum of your employee experience. Now, what does that actually mean? Is that a proof that the engagement, and if you improve the engagement, employee engagement, does that have a positive effect on the business performance? And the answer is absolutely yes. So there has been studies that has been done, West Monroe in particular. They noticed that a simple 5% gain in employee engagement has additional 3% lift in revenue. And that's a huge one, especially in these times. 3% lift in revenue is significant revenue, right? So it's not something to scoff at. So clearly, as long as you treat your employees the way you treat your customers, I believe there is a net positive impact on the overall business. Moving on to the second trend, there is obviously process automation, and these are table stakes these days, right? This is not something that has started with COVID, but COVID definitely has accelerated a lot of these things. We were talking to a big consulting firm that was, basically looking at decommissioning their old process automation tools, and they're looking to move strictly into cloud low code platforms such as Creatio, because they are trying to automate things as much as possible. So McKinsey predicts that about 50% of the work that we are currently doing will be automated over the next couple of years, right? And then that includes machine learning, that includes lead generation, lead management. So all that simply means that as employees, as me, as Corey, as everybody, whatever we are doing right now is potentially going to get automated. I'm not saying everything, but I would say low task that requires a lot more manual work than strategic thought process. So as professional employees, we need to reskill and upskill our skills as well. As a matter of fact, I have reskilled myself for the last 15, 20 years. What I started in 2000 is not something that I want to do right now. And I constantly have to keep up not only with the technology, but also with the new employees who are coming to the workforce with a lot better skill sets than I do. So those things are completely truth even before the pandemic, and it's even more, I would say, much more important post-pandemic. So with all of these disruptions that is going on with the employee engagement, the ability to communicate, employees have to rapidly reskill. What this all means is that the businesses overall also have to be very adaptable to any disruptions. You know, one of the first casualty of the pandemic was obviously restaurants, right? But the restaurants that were quickly able to go back into that takeout, and they were able to very rapidly adapt to those additional, cleanliness and all of those new requirements that the government has imposed on. They seem to be doing okay, but the businesses that were not able to adapt have rapidly disintegrated. That includes Hertz Rental as well, right? So what this also means is that you need to be much more customer focused, because there's a lot of things that is in the customers, and your name has to be prominent. Customer centric businesses like Apple, Amazon continue to amaze. They continue to do positive businesses. Their stock market is going up. Stock prices shooting through the roof. So all in all, customer centric is basically table stakes these days, both for B2B and for B2C. And we are seeing this from a Creatio side as well. So now that we have seen a trends that dovetails very nicely into customer experience, what are some of the customer experience trends that we are noticing? And there's a specific reason there is AI that is put in the center of the screen. And I'm seeing that a lot when I talk to my customers these days, or at least to the prospects. And AI is not just about predicting, basically, what the customer is going to buy next best offers, anything like that. AI is now beginning to go into many areas. It's able to predict forecasting, right? And I'm going to do that in the demonstration later on to show you how we can leverage machine learning to predict some forecasting analysis in a professional organization, right? And predictive analytics, omni-channel, online collaborations. Creatio has obviously footprint into all of this. That includes its feed, innate feed capability that talks about hyper-personalized communications. We are introducing more and more into the AI. I think we did a demo potentially, I think about a month ago, where we talked about machine learning as well in terms of predictive analysis and overall employee experience as well. So what does this actually mean? From just because you do customer experience, it is a buzzword, but ultimately it means something to the businesses, right? And obviously you may have seen this data beforehand, and I apologize for that, but if not, there are studies that have been done by both McKinsey's and Deloitte's of the world that do speak about how high-end customer experience has a net positive benefit overall in the businesses, whether that be coming from 60% more profitability or lowering the cost of servicing the customers because you're able to retain them, or employee engagement itself, there is a net positive impact. So all in all, when we look at the overall trends and dovetail it that into customer experience, that has a net positive effect. Now let's take a look at how what trends do you think have the greatest impact?
Great, thank you so much, Nandit. So we're going to open up a poll for our audience today, and the question that we'd like to ask you is, which trends do you think will have the greatest impact on the industry? And while we give you a moment to answer here, Nandish, I'd like to take a seated question from the audience.
Sure, go for it.
Great. So our first question is, how much time does it take to implement set up the Creatio low-code solution?
Oh, how long does it take to implement low-code solution? Actually, not that long at all. As a matter of fact, we routinely do proof of concept very quickly, typically depending upon the use case. Keep in mind that low-code is usually applied for a specific group or a department. In such a case, typically you're talking about like 2 to 3 days of building that application, obviously testing it out, and then deploying it. We're talking about a couple of days, maybe a week at best.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nandish. So let's take a look at our results, and then we'll continue moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So the majority of the audience said the need for higher agility and adaptability. And while we think that these are all very relevant and have a great impact on the industry, we certainly agree, and this is something that we'll address moving forward. So Nandish, let's proceed.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with the poll myself. I do see process automation and then the businesses being more agile and being more resilient to any disruptions. That is amazing. Right, let's move to the next slide, please, Corey.
Just a
All
moment.
right, awesome. All right, so now that we have understood from your perspective, what are some of the key trends, now let's take a look at how low code can overall help with the professional organizations. But before we go there, let's set up some basic fundamental definitions before we get into more specific things. So this is a cool slide that talks about low code technology, right? So oftentimes people ask me, what is low code, right? And it simply means that you are basically building an application with little to no coding. It simply means that there's already pre-coded blocks that you simply drag and drop and connect them to the next block. And that's basically like building blocks. Almost think of it like Lego blocks that you're trying to build a structure. And it's in this context, it's actually building an application. The typical features are obviously drag and drop functionality, ability to repurpose the blocks into some other applications or being able to repurpose them. There's a lot of out-of-the-box functionality. Security are table stakes because those are critical. And obviously, once you build the applications, you also need to have some dashboarding and reporting to make sure that the application is delivering value in terms of consuming and giving data and converting those data into knowledge or insights. So the next step is you must have heard of terms like citizen developer, right? And those are buzzwords that is coming about a lot. And these days, especially, we are noticing, and I'm noticing actually quite a lot of citizen developers. So it simply means that the citizen developers are part-time developers, typically coming from the business side, right? So they are pretty much running, say, sales enablement or sales team, but not necessarily hardcore IT developers. So they don't have any strong software development experience, software development skills. But what they do know is inside out of the business side, right? So they know exactly what the business needs. They have the visualization of how that application should look like, working in a very efficient way. And therefore, they don't need to be learning C# or C++ or any other software languages, but they're able to build those applications rapidly if they're given the right tools. So that's where the low-code, no-code comes in. Drag and drop functionality, they'll be able to build that applications very quickly. And oftentimes, these are targeted to a specific group, right? You're talking about, say, sales department. This is not going enterprise-wide, but specifically into one aspect of sales, maybe contract life cycle, maybe lead management. So very defined scope, and it's not enterprise-wide, and it is definitely not a bigger applications. So with that in the background, let's take a look at what you can create using low-code platforms, right? So oftentimes it is business processes, right? And when you're talking about business processes, I mean, how do you take a prospect from a contact, from a prospect, convert that prospect into a lead, and from a lead, how do you nurture them all the way into an actual customer? So those are business processes. Business process could also be order management that requires discounting approval. It could talk about contract life cycle, where your sales is working typically with legal and going back and forth. So those are all business processes, right? In addition to that, some sort of a prediction, right? So you want to understand which customer is best suited for that particular product based upon particular history, understanding about what the customers have done in the past, maybe some forecasting perspective, or recruiting, right? So if you're looking to hire talented people, that is a business process. So business process is very generic, and overall, as a byproduct of that, I would say that AI, machine learning, data modeling, optimizations, all of that is byproduct of that. So what else can you do from an organizational perspective? It is cross-departmental. So typically, when you're working with, say, contract lifecycle, sales is involved, finance, legal is involved. Maybe sometimes internal compliance is involved as well. So there's a lot of those cross pollination of business processes. So when you're talking about recruiting, typically it starts off from a recruiter side on the HR side, and then the HR then has to collaborate either with sales teams or marketing team or IT team, whatever that may be, and they have to cross collaborate. So those are a couple of things that we can talk about. And as it pertains to today's demo, we're going to spend some time on the HR side from a recruiting perspective, what we're going to do. Right, let's go to the next slide. And what is the overall business impact of low-code platforms? Obviously, everybody needs to be more agile. The productivity is pretty high. And overall, the idea here is that there is an enhanced customer experience. And even though it says customer experience, I also like to put that as an employee experience, because a lot of these business processes also impact employees. And obviously, as you saw previously, and better customer employee experience has a net positive impact on overall business as well. And finally, what really drives the transformation into the low-code platform is the ability to do things very quickly through operational agility and also cost, because most of these low-code platforms are built by business users. They are not IT, which means that typically they are paid much lesser than they're also doing this as a part-time job, not necessarily as a full-time job, so that you're not hiring expensive IT people to build applications, but typically these are done by business users. All right, so where does Creatio fit into all of this? So you already heard of Creatio's CRM platform and also business process management platform. So from an architecture perspective, you already know that we are a CRM first and foremost. So and we serve the purpose of sales department, marketing department, and contact service department as well. And we also have extensive marketplace applications where you can download third-party applications that are divided into, pardon me, I'll go to the next slide. That is going into third-party applications, and from third-party applications, you can then divide that into add-ons, which simply means that your existing Creatio demo instance, you can take it to the next level by connecting it to making it much better, right? So in other words, adding on interviews, adding on HR, recruiting, and so on and so forth. Or it could be extensions where you're connecting it to a CTI like Avayas or Salesforces or ERP systems. And then finally, there is also vertical solutions. So if you're focused on doing risk management, you can download a risk module. If you're working with rental car companies, you can download their applications or warehouse management applications from our partner Reply, right? But all of that, basically sales, marketing, service, are all business process in the background, and we use our Studio Enterprise platform, low-code platform, in order to supplement that. So the foundational piece for our CRM ultimately is the Studio part. Let's go on to the next slide, and you might have heard of this Creatio superpowers in the past, a BPM engine, low-code platform, and unified CRM. And Creatio is the only applications that is in the intersection of all of these. Typically, CRM don't have much play in the low-code platforms, and low-code platforms typically don't interact with the CRM side. Creatio is that unique platform that does all of three. Corey, do you want to add any of your flavor to this? Typically, this is something that you speak to very well as well. So
right, I think that this is, obviously these are some core differentiators, and we want to quickly, emphasize that, Creatio's vision is that we believe that we created this world where everyone can automate business ideas within minutes, and we do this and we enable this by giving users with little to no coding experience the tools mentioned to simplify daily tasks and to automate these processes.
Awesome. All right, and let's go to the next slide, which is basically hands-on demo, right? So I suspect most of you are already tired of hearing me walk through the slides. Corey, if you can let me share my screen. Excellent. So Corey, let me know if you can see my Creatio screen.
I can see your Creatio screen, Nandish. Looking forward to this.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so from our slides, we have taken a look at low-code. So today I'm going to focus mostly on the low-code platform. And as you can see from the workspace, I do have my dashboards, but from my HR recruiting perspective, I thought that rather than do the typical sales or service related, let's do something interesting, right? So here is a recruiting perspective. So basically the idea here is that we are trying to recruit the brightest candidates for our organization, and that is a typical non-standard CRM application, right? So that's much more low code. So what I have done here is basically we would be obviously leveraging our marketing campaigns to identify good candidates and put out some job postings and all of that. And then once people come in, we can actually track them through our lead management software. And then I've actually downloaded a marketplace applications called Surveys, where I can set up some interview questions as part of my questionnaires and record those questionnaires and then tag that against the particular lead. So for example, let's go ahead and create a new lead, and we are looking to make an external hire. So as you can see that this is a CRM platform that also takes care of external hires. Let me go ahead and save that in here, and let me go ahead and open that. So this is where I can attach a new contact. So maybe we are trying to bring in Winter Hodge into our organization. Let's go ahead and bring that in, and let's go ahead and save it. So basically what is happening right now is that we have created a workflow, as you can see, for Winter Hodge. And this workflow is very different than the typical lead management that we typically use for sales purposes, right? So from a context perspective, you can have different stages with different tasks for each of these, depending upon the kind of use cases that we have. So from a lead perspective, we are assuming that this is a ongoing lead, and now you can see that there is a initial screening to be emailed to be sent out to the candidate that is automatically assigned to the supervisor. So let me go ahead and finish that task up. And then what I then schedule is to schedule a Zoom call with the candidate, right? And typically these days, there's a lot of these Zoom meetings that is almost table stakes. What I've also done is to integrate from our marketplace a Zoom connector. So you can see there's already a create Zoom meeting in here that is automatically tagged in to set up a one-on-one online interview or a first round of interview with the candidate to collect the basic things, right? And once that is done, and assuming that the candidate has passed that preliminary colors, then we go to the next level of the interview, where we are setting it up with the recruiter to say that, hey, you need to conduct an interview and collect the feedback, right? And typically those interviews need to be doctored somewhere. So for what I've done that is, like I said, from a interview perspective, I've used a new new applications from our marketplace. So let me call that recruiter for winter, and selecting an assessment. And there are a bunch of questionnaires that you can have. So there could be a questionnaire of set of interview questions from a recruiter perspective, from a sales perspective, from a consulting perspective. So you can have different interviews questions that is done in here. So I'm going to select the interview, recruiter interview, and click save. So basically what is happening here is that once I start the interview and I call that candidate, and then I can say that, you know what, this candidate is attached to Winter Hodge. And now I get a bunch of questions that are minimum questions that the recruiter need to ask and collect feedback on. So for example, you can say, describe a time you got coached and received constructive feedback. Then I can start typing it any kind of feedback that the candidate has done or something like that. Maybe I can say awesome. Maybe this is a really good candidate. But basically, you can type in as information as possible, and then you basically save that interview questions, right? And then you go back to the lead side, open up that lead, and say, did that interview? How was that feedback? And then you can say, well, I completed that interview. And then we basically pop up a message and say that, hey, is that interview worthwhile? Do you envision that candidate to go from the recruiter interview into a manager interview? Obviously, if you say no, the lead is then put automatically as disqualified, and we'll send out an automatic message indicating that they have not gone through the second round. But if I say yes, then it will go to the next round of setting it up with a manager interview, and now we're going to schedule a call with the hiring manager and with the candidate also, right? Let's assume that this interview has taken place, and now we are setting up a call with the manager now, and the manager could come back like I showed you earlier, and now the manager could come back and say, I'm going to set it up with I think it was with Mentor. And the manager is going to pick up, maybe this is for sales, they will pick up the sales interview. And now when they open up, they get a different set of questions, unlike the previous one, which was quite a bit. They get a different set of questions. So they can start populating that as well. So as you can see, you can be supplied with different interviews, one for recruiter, one for the manager. And now the question then goes, what does the manager want to do, right? And typically what happens with the manager is that they will either wait for, they will want to move the candidate to the next stage, or they want to interview more candidates. So there are 3 different branches in which the candidate can proceed. So let's assume that the manager wants to interview more candidates. So you're going to put them on wait list and then save. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to let the recruiter know that, hey, you need to follow up with the manager in a number of set days, maybe 2 days, 5 days. Those can be configured. We assume it would be 2 days in here. So 2 days comes in, you can see that the date is set up for August 20th as opposed to August 10th. So August 20th, the recruiter comes back, realizes that he or she needs to follow up with the manager, and then we're going to ask the same question, hey, do you want to do more interviews, or do you want to put it on a wait list, right? Or do you want to disqualify that lead? So assuming that the manager does want to move 2 days later, they change their mind. Now it goes to the background checks, and obviously you can start scheduling background checks with the agency and convey the background results with the candidate to say that, hey, they have passed, yes or no. And now it is time to schedule to make an offer to the candidate. And let's assume that you make the offer, then it's up to the candidate to accept the offer, they reject the offer, or they want to renegotiate the offer. So those are another 3 kinds of branching off that actually happens. Let's assume that they want to renegotiate the offer. In that case, what we'll do is we'll set up another set of tasks to go back to the manager to see what kind of best offers that we can offer to the new candidate. And once that manager comes up with a new offer, we're going to come back and schedule another call with the candidate. So basically, you can see that this is entirely a business process that is letting the recruiter follow, and rather than have to figure out what should they do next, we are basically following them, giving them what steps should happen one by one. And let's say this time the candidate does accept the offer. Now it goes to the final stage of completed, and then we signed off a letter, and then we obviously kick off the employee onboarding process of bringing them in, collecting their documents, setting up some trainings and all of that. So you can see that this is a complete life cycle of attracting a candidate through the campaign, setting it up, leveraging the leads as the means to take them from the initial through all of the basic interviews, and then once they accept the offer, then we kick off the employee onboarding process. So you're probably wondering, for some of you, how did we come up with this application, right? So basically what we have done is we have created a different workflow for external hires, and for the rest of them, we are using a different workflow. So for the external hires, we are using this kind of workflow, and these are all different lookups. And you can see that if I simply double click on that, you get additional lookups that you can use. And this is the power of the dynamic case management. Some of you are already familiar with that. This is basically used during unstructured business processes. If you want to put a new stage in there, simply select that and then select another qualification there. And this is where you can start adding additional tasks, or you can start to move that in here. So you can do all sorts of reconfiguration of the process itself. Right. In addition to tasks, you can also have approvals. You can send email notifications, and also you can call a business process. So anytime when it comes to recruiter interviews or hiring manager interviews, or for that matter, offer, you're now noticing there is a business process that is attached to it. So let's take a look at what happens when it goes to recruiter interview stage. For that, we are simply calling in a business process, and the business process is basically using the low-code engine, the business process engine through our Studio Enterprise. All of that supplied through the low-code platform. Everything is drag and drop. These are all the system actions. These are all the user actions where the user has to do something. These are all the system actions where we are pulling data in. So if your data is sitting in, say, Workday or some other HR system, we can leverage call web services to pull data in and populate that into Creatio. And all we are doing is reading the lead, setting up a task to set up the interview, and setting up some conditional tasks to say that once the interview is set up, then we're going to give the option of saying that should you move the candidate to the manager interview, yes or no. And if the answer is yes, then we will move that, change the status to the manager interview. Otherwise, we're going to change the status to cancel. Ditto with when it goes into the offer stage, then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say, did the candidate accept the offer? If the answer is no, we cancel it. If the answer is yes, then we complete it. If the answer is no, they want to renegotiate, then we're going to create a task for the manager, and from the manager, then we schedule it back to the candidate, and then we come back to the basic question, and this cycle will continue until the candidate will either say no or they will accept the offer. So that's how we are able to bring in aspects of low-code technology and then use that for recruiting purposes. So that is one of the use cases that typically is used in the professional organizations outside of the CRM perspective. I thought this was something that would be of interest to you as well. So the second part of all of this is that Kanban View is very handy. So as and when you're looking at it from a recruiting perspective, you can download a Kanban View from our marketplace. This is a free application that tells you where are different candidates in different stages of being offered, right? So this is where you have a bunch of candidates in the new stage. These are candidates that are currently in the offer stage, so on and so forth. So that is a great way for professional organizations, leadership to understand what is going on and make things much more efficient. So previously, I also talked about machine learning and forecasting. So let's take a couple of minutes going through that. And from the machine learning perspective, what I have decided to do was we need at least 100 records to make a prediction, because we need a good amount of data. And the only record that was available for me in the demo instance happened to be opportunities. So I decided to play with this opportunity record just a little bit. So all I decided to do was to leverage the opportunity amount. And then I added 3 new fields for the amount. One where I'm saying that I'm going to let the machine learning algorithm predict what that amount should be. Then in addition to that, I also created from a forecasting perspective, what would the manager, what is their gut feeling on what that opportunity amount should be, and what should that vice president of that sales organization gut could be, right? And we can hide these using the object permissions so that the sales rep will only see the opportunity amount, manager can see opportunity amount and the manager call, the vice president can see all of it, right? Because they are higher in the organization. So you can use that through object permissions. So how did we get into that? First of all, I'm going to show you what is going to happen, right? So if I change the opportunity amount to say from 13,500 to say 9,000, and the budget is about 8,500. So what's going to happen is the machine learning, which is currently at 11,000, is going to change as soon as I save it and refresh that page. So now you'll see that what was previously 11,000 has now rapidly gone into 7,835, depending upon the new reality of the new numbers that has been populated from budget and the opportunity amount. So that's how very quickly you can use machine learning to make predictions based upon certain characteristics of that amount. All right, so let me show you how did I come up with that machine learning model. So for that, you can use the machine learning model that is inbuilt into Creatio. And you have a couple of ways of doing that. You can either predict a lookup. This is very good in instances where a lead comes in and you have to predict who is the best sales rep to take that lead. This can also work in the case management perspective, where you can, depending upon the case category, you figure out who is the best agent to help answer that question. Numeric prediction is basically what I have actually used in here, because I'm predicting a number for the opportunity amount, and predictive scoring is mainly used for lead scoring. It's figuring out what is the likelihood of that lead closing, and recommendation is mostly like next best offer or next best action. And from an object perspective, you can use it for pretty much anything. You can use it for an opportunity record, you can use it for a lead record, you can use it for any of those records that's in here. So you can see that I've already created an opportunity predict value for opportunity. And I am saying that the value that I want to predict is actually the opportunity amount, meaning that I'm trying to predict an amount for that opportunity using these 4 parameters that is already in there. But I can also add more if I wanted. These are all the additional parameters that I already have, and I also can create it using custom fields if I've already created that through Session Wizard. And finally, whatever value that I predict, I am going to populate that in the opportunity predicted amount. Since I'm only working with numbers, it is only going to show me fields that are in decimal place in here, so that it's going to do some auto filtering for you. So once you have that machine learning model, the next step is leveraging the business process to figure out when should that machine learning happen, right? So if you notice that what I did was, when I changed either the budget or the opportunity like I previously did, in the background, we are simply going to read that opportunity, whichever the opportunity, change that, and we're going to say that make predictions only for that opportunity and nothing else. So that way we are not running it for 100 or 1,000 or how many ever opportunity records that are in there. We are saying that only that opportunity that I modified, like I did like 5-10 minutes ago, only for that should you start changing that, making predictions. So I hope this was helpful from making a predictions perspective of saying when I modify any of these, that machine learning is also predicted. So let's go ahead and change this back to say 11,000 and change the budget this back to say 10, maybe to 13,500. Save it again and reload it. It'll go back to 10,000 from 7,000 there. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is forecasting. How can we, this is a fairly new feature that is available in 7.16 and henceforth. So what I've done here is I've created a SVP level forecast and a manager level forecast. Now you can create unlimited number of forecasts. You can group it by different time periods. You can have it by a monthly forecast. You can have it by a quarterly forecast. You can do all sorts of things. So when you come in here and you select the +1, it will tell you, do you want to do a monthly, quarterly, or a yearly forecast, and how should that forecast entity looks like. So for example, I can do a VP level forecast, right? And I can say this should be a quarterly, and what should entity be based upon that? Typically, you want it to be done by opportunities. Then I can say that I want the opportunity to be grouped initially by the owner, like the way it is done here. So I can group it by Mary King and Simon Clark. And once that is done, I want them to be grouped by the account, right? And then you can continue to build your hierarchy as well. And you can also expand that and then select secondary fields to group it by. In this case, what I've done is I've grouped it by owner and then by the account. So an account could have multiple opportunities. So over here, what I have done is I automatically pick up that, remember that 13,500 is the amount that I have pre-populated as a sales rep. And this is the prediction that is coming from my forecast. So if you click on this, you can see that I'm actually picking the value from the opportunity, and this is being closed in the Q3 of this year. And I'm simply taking up the opportunity amount and multiplying that by 100. That's it. And whereas for my forecast, I'm picking it from the manager call, because I am, as a manager, forecasting my Q3. All I have to do is to populate that manager call field, and all of that information is automatically populated in the forecast field, right? And this can have its own access rules. This access rights can be set up strictly that only the manager has visibility, and manager at higher has the visibility to see it. On the other hand, from a very high level, from a SVP level, I can get a little bit more granular than that, right? So typically, much as you saw previously from the sales rep, I'm looking at it from a sales rep perspective. I'm looking at it from the manager perspective, manager call. I'm also looking at it from a VP perspective, maybe a GVP of that. So I'm picking up from a VP, but I'm also picking it from predictions, right? So I'm picking up from whatever the machine learning model algorithm has predicted. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways in which 4 different people have told me what that opportunity amount is going to be. And typically sales rep is going to be a little bit more aggressive, manager is a little bit more conservative, VP is even more conservative, and machine language algorithm is also making a little bit more conservative predictions, but you're also noticing there's a weighted call. So as an SVP, I can take advantage of a formula in here. So when you make a thing, I can also have 3 different ways in which I can do. One is editable, which means that I can put whatever value I want. The second is a formula. And the third is a value from the object. The value from the object has already been shown to you, where I picked the value directly from the opportunity record. But in this case, I'm actually creating a formula. And formula, basically what I'm saying is I'm going to give a weightage of 2 to the sales reps number, weightage of 3 to the sales manager's number, ditto with a VP call, and from machine learning, I'm going to give a weightage of 2 and divide the whole thing by 10. And whatever value I get is the number weighted call I'm going to get it. And using that, as a SVP, I am going to make editable value. So when I go to my CEO, I'm going to go by the weighted call. So I'm going to take a composite number of various parameters so that I'm being very careful from forecasting perspective. So you can do a very detailed forecasting analysis using a bunch of factors. As you can see, we're using a gut feeling from different people. We are using a machine learning algorithm, and then we're also using our own weighted call to make my own predictions. So in summary, what I've shown you in this demo is by looking at it from a different perspective, like we are using a recording and defining a business process using business processes. Then I walked you through a machine learning model for making some predictions, making some changes in the opportunity record, and then leveraging all of that from a forecasting perspective. And this is typically how professional service organizations are leveraging all of these technologies to do some digital disruption. I hope this demo was helpful in terms of putting it all into a context of some real life examples. Corey, I'm going to end my demo at this time and take any questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nandish. This was very helpful. Just one moment as we switch over to our next section here, which will take us into our Q&A. So Nandish, let's take some questions from the audience. Our next question that we have is, which companies specifically is this solution good for? Would it be useful for insurance companies?
Absolutely. I mean, insurance, the answer is already there, right? So we typically go into any companies that have a lot of business processes, right? So what that means is banking industry, financing industry, insurance, wealth management, manufacturing, any industry that requires a lot of business processes that either needs to be automated or needs to be streamlined is ideal for Creatio and its low-code business process management tool. If it is an e-commerce, let's say like Amazon's, where you're going to the website, picking up whatever it is, I wouldn't categorize that as a very strong candidate. In the background, potentially we could use it from a machine language perspective, but I would be more inclined more towards a B2B segment, especially where they have a lot of business processes, compliances, audits, risk management, new product introductions, anything that requires a lot of people coming together. There needs to be streamlined business processes is very ideal for it.
Great, thank you so much, Nandish. That was very helpful. Next question is about the kind of support that Creatio provides. So what kind of support do you provide? I assume that this question is pertaining to our customer success program and onboarding and just speaking to overall how we support new customers using our solutions.
Right, and Creatio doesn't leave you hanging, obviously. So once you come on board, there is, like you said, Corey, there is customer success managers who have an active interest in making sure that you take advantage of the platform and using it to its fullest extent. In addition to that, there is obviously support. We have our own SLAs for all of that, but there is also a strong documentation available online. There's also a community of our users. There's also a partner network. from marketplace applications. So overall, between the documentations, free trainings, CSMs, community, and fellow citizen developers, you're all in great shape.
Excellent. Our next question is about trials that are available. Is there a trial available? I think one of the things we can speak to here, Nandish, is our Studio Free.
Correct. So Studio Free, there are, I would segment them into two things, right? Studio Free is a free product, so there is no trial for that. It's just free, right? So you can use it unlimited time. There is no limitation on that. For the rest of them, which is Studio Enterprise and CRM, business process management tools, there is a trial available, a free trial for 14 days. So typically you just download a trial. You can request the data to be pre-populated, so you'll get your CRM with some data or without data. It's up to you. And then you can test it out for 14 weeks, which is 14 days typically, which is a good amount of time to start playing with it. Typically, I would say Creatio is so simple that you should be able to start learning that product within a day or two. So 14 days, I would say, is a lot of time. And depending upon the interest and the account, I think further conversations could be had.
Excellent. Thank you, Nandish. Our next question is it possible to integrate Creatio with existing client databases?
Absolutely. So we do that very routinely in Creatio. Oftentimes when we are using Creatio as a low-code platform, it is sitting in an ecosystem of other software applications, right? So when I talked about recruiting demo, typically those leads are either sitting in another system, right? So maybe like a Workday or some other HCM system. In that case, we'll be able to pull data in from them and then make changes to that data and push that data back to that HCM systems. We also integrate with ERP systems in a manufacturing segment where the customer data is sitting in ERP. We pull that data in, synthesize that data, push the data back to ERP. And also from a banking sector, we typically integrate with their core banking software like Jack Henry, Scimitar, or Fiserv. So those are typical integrations, and those are routinely done. Absolutely.
Excellent. And then could you just tell us a little bit more about the integrations and synchronization features in Creatio's low-code solution?
Yeah, I alluded to that in the during one of the business processes. I talked about web services. So web services is an easy way for you to integrate within the business process itself, pull data in, synthesize data, and push data back. Outside of that, there are other integration methods as well. There is brute force database to database integration. There is integrations by pulling in data through an Excel spreadsheet and being able to export data out of Creatio through Excel. There is OData protocols for Google. There is single sign-on. So there's so many ways in which we integrate and coexist with many other applications that I don't think that is going to be a big challenge. Obviously, you need to work with one of our partners initially to make sure that all of those protocols are adhered to. But once that is done, it should be smooth sailing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for answering all the questions from the audience, Nandish, and thank you for such a helpful demo and discussion. We want to also take this opportunity to share that Creatio has introduced a new online course called Lowcode App Development on the Creatio platform on Udemy. The course is aimed to help individuals master business software development without coding skills. Again, really leveraging those Creatio superpowers that Nandish and I spoke to earlier. And students are provided with 8 modules to learn how to develop applications on Creatio's low-code platform. And the duration of this course is just 8.5 hours, and viewers are able to take away really a breadth of knowledge from just this 8.5 hours and 8 modules. So we encourage you to take advantage of this and learn how to use Creatio, hopefully with our new course available. And as a reminder, I know that I mentioned before that we will be providing a recording of the webinar today, but we'd also like to remind you that this webinar is part of a larger series of digital events that Creatio has offered to our external community. We offer the events in 7 different formats and look forward to educating you and providing you with more knowledge about how to leverage Creatio and utilize low code. So, we invite you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel to see any previous events and continue subscribing to see our live events. And we hope that you check our website for our list of our future and upcoming events. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Nandish, for leading a great discussion.
Thanks, Corey. My pleasure.